Hello, everybody. This is section 2 of chapter 6. Chapter 6 is about biomes. Section 2 is all the forest biomes. By the end of this class, we should be able to list the 3 characteristics of a tropical rainforest, name and describe the main layers within the tropical rainforest, describe one plant in a temperate deciduous forest and an adaptation that helps that plant survive, and describe an adaptation that might help an animal survive in a taiga. We should also be able to name 2 threats to the world's forest biomes. We'll begin. Of all the biomes in the world, forest biomes are the most widespread, the most diverse, and I would argue some of the most important biomes on our planet. The large trees of forests need a lot of water. So you can only find a forest where the temperatures are mild to hot and where there's plenty of rainfall. There are 3 main forest biomes in the world. They're named based on their heat, the heat that they have. Okay, so tropical, those are the hot forest biomes. Temperate, those are cooler forest biomes. And coniferous means cold. Well, coniferous means pine trees. Conifers are trees that have pine cones. Okay, but coniferous trees, coniferous forests would be found where it's cold. They're also called boreal forests or taigas. So let's begin with the hot forests where there's lots of rain. You have the tropical rainforest. A tropical rainforest is a forest or jungle near the equator. You only find tropical rainforests in between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. That means 30 degrees south latitude and 30 degrees north latitude. There's a narrow band of the earth that you find it in. You don't find it where it's too cold near the South Pole, and you don't find tropical rainforest where it's too warm, too cold near the North Pole either. Tropical rainforests are important. They play a vital role. They regulate the world's climate. So all of those trees actually help to make sure that the planet doesn't get too hot or too cold. They play vital roles in the nitrogen cycle, the oxygen cycle, and the carbon cycle, because all of those trees are doing photosynthesis. They basically scrub the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. I mean, not all of it, but they take carbon dioxide in and they give out oxygen. So they convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. Tropical rainforests are humid and warm, and they get strong sunlight. This allows them to maintain a fairly constant temperature that is ideal for a wide variety of plants and animals. So you get a lot of biological diversity within a tropical rainforest because there are so many things that can survive there. Here's an example. The graph on the left shows the rainfall or precipitation, it's called, and also the temperature for the tropical rainforest. So you can see it's getting a lot of rain every month. Okay, it's always getting over 10 centimeters. That's over 6 inches of rain every month. Wow, that's a lot of rain. And it fluctuates, the levels of rain fluctuate by month, from month to month. You can see that in September, there's the least amount of rain, but even then, 6 inches of rain, like we never get that in a month. That's a crazy amount. Also, the temperatures you can see are very constant, right around 25 degrees Celsius, which is on average about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see the regions of the world that have tropical rainforests are highlighted in light green. They might be hard to see, so I'll help to highlight them. So You can see that there are some here in Central America, some here in South America. There are some here in Africa. There are some in India, the Madagascar island, and in Southeast Asia. Okay, jungles or tropical rainforests. And notice that they are only found in between 30 degrees south and 30 degrees north. Okay, so they're found in this band right here. Nutrients in the tropical rainforests. Okay, most nutrients in a tropical rainforest are actually in the plants, not in the soil. And there's a reason for that. Decomposers on the rainforest floor break down dead organisms to return the nutrients to the soil, which is great, but the plants, there are so many of them growing so fast that they quickly absorb all the nutrients in the soil. In fact, there are some trees in the tropical rainforest that support fungi that feed on dead organic matter on the rainforest floor. And in this relationship, the fungi transfers the nutrients directly to the tree instead of going through the soil. So if you were to dig up a soil sample in a tropical rainforest and test it, it wouldn't actually be very good for growing until it got a bunch of organics into the soil. You'd need to introduce a lot of animal waste and dead decomposing matter in order to get those nutrients into the soil. But in a tropical rainforest, when it's just naturally occurring, everything is in such an arms race to grow, and they're all competing for the same space. So the nutrients in the soil get gobbled up real fast. Nutrients from dead organic matter are removed so efficiently that runoff from rainforests is often as pure as distilled water. So the water can't even get any minerals if it goes through runoff is when the water doesn't go into the ground. It just lands maybe on the ground and then makes like a little river or runs downhill. That's really crazy. So the water doesn't have any opportunity to absorb any minerals or nutrients. So the runoff is pure water. It's crazy. Most tropical soils that are cleared of plants for agriculture lack nutrients and cannot support crops for more than a few years. So it's actually a bad idea to clear tropical rainforests for the purpose of farming. So that happens a lot in the tropical rainforest, and it's a big problem right now for our tropical rainforests. But the people who are doing it must be very desperate because the areas that they're clearing, the soil is really bad there. So like, why would they even do that? So they must be very desperate. Many of the trees form above ground roots called buttresses or braces that can grow sideways from the tree to help provide extra support within the thin soil. Now let's talk about the layers of the rainforest. In a tropical rainforest, different types of plants can grow in different layers. There are 4 main layers of the rainforest. There is the emergent layer. I think that's the one that might be the top. Then the upper canopy. That's the second down from the top. The lower layer and the understory. Here is a diagram showing the layers of the rainforest. In the emergent layer, which is at the very top, these are the tops of the trees. There's very bright light here. In the upper canopy, there's bright to filtered light, so they don't get their light directly because there are so many leaves above them that there are leaves above them, so that the light has to filter through a layer or 2 of leaves. The lower canopy, in this area, they get filtered light, so the light that doesn't come directly from the sun, it has to pass through other leaves in order to get here. So the light is less intense, therefore it's a little darker. And then in the understory, that's all very dense shade. Not a lot of light gets down there because the light has to go through so many different layers of leaves. The emergent layer is the top foliage layer of the forest, where the trees extend above the surrounding trees. Trees in this layer grow and emerge into direct sunlight, reaching heights of 60 to 70 meters. That's a lot. 70 meters? That's like 300, that's, well, more like 200 feet. That's a lot. And these trees can also, their trunks can measure 5 meters around. 5 meters around is like 20 feet around. No, 16 feet. Animals such as eagles, bats, monkeys, and snakes live in the emergent layer. The next layer, the canopy, is the layer of treetops, or the layers, multiple layers of treetops that shade the forest floor. This is considered to be the primary layer of the rainforest. This is where most of the stuff in the rainforest actually happens. Most organic life would be found here. The tall trees, more than 30 meters tall, form a dense layer that absorb up to 95% of all the sunlight. The canopy can be split into 2 layers, the upper and lower canopy. The lower canopy receives less sunlight and the upper canopy receives more. Epiphytes. What are epiphytes? Epiphytes are plants that use other plants to support, for support, but not for nourishment. These are located on high trees in the canopy. So they are plants that grow on top of other plants, but they don't use them for nourishment. Well, okay, what's a plant that uses another plant but does use it for nourishment? Well, there are parasitic plants called vines, and when a vine grows on a tree, it sends little tendrils into the tree and it sucks water out of the tree, water and nutrients out of the tree. And those are parasites. But epiphytes don't do that. So this would be like a flower that grows from a tiny little pool that is formed by the cup of, maybe there's an area where there's a little water that gathers where a branch of a tree meets with the trunk. Or maybe some organic matter, some decomposing leaves have gathered in that area, and over time it has made a little pocket of soil, a small little pocket of soil, and there are plants, flowers growing from them. I think they're going to give an example now. Growing on tall trees allows these plants to reach the sunlight that is needed for photosynthesis and to absorb water and nutrients that run down the side of the tree after it rains. Most animals that live in the rainforest live in the canopy because they depend on the abundant flowers and fruits, the epiphytes, that grow here. They didn't give an example. Let's continue. The understory is a foliage layer that is beneath and shaded by the main canopy of a forest. Very little light reaches this layer, allowing only trees and shrubs that are adapted to the shade to grow here. Most plants in the understory don't grow more than 3.5 meters tall, about 10 feet. Herbs with large flat leaves that grow on the forest floor capture as much light as they can, the small amount of sunlight. So they have very, very big leaves to try and, it's like using solar panels. If you're not catching enough light, you use a bigger solar panel so that you can catch more light. So these plants have, in the understory, have large flat leaves so that they can catch as much light as possible. The diversity of a rainforest vegetation has led to the evolution of a very diverse community of animals. Most rainforest animals are specialists that use specific resources in particular ways to avoid competition and have adapted amazing ways to capture prey and avoid predators. Now, why wouldn't animals want to compete? Because it's more efficient for them to adapt other adaptations so that they don't compete with other animals. When you have animals trying to eat the same thing, one of those animals is going to die. Okay, one is going to outperform the other. So you try to find another place where or another thing to eat, and then evolution, you start getting better and better. More adaptations are selected for to help not compete. So you want to avoid competition. That's just the way nature happens. Remember back when we were talking about evolution, the thing that does evolution is natural selection. And it's not like natural selection has like a plan in mind. It just happens. And it's whatever helps the animal to, whatever adaptations make it easier for the organism to pass on its genetic material. That's the adaptation that gets selected to be passed on to future generations. Insects use camouflage to avoid predators, and they might be shaped like leaves or twigs so that they blend in. Let's talk about the threats to the rainforest. Every minute of every day, nearly 150 acres of tropical rainforest are cleared for logging operations, agriculture, and oil exploration. Exotic pet trading robs the rainforests of rare and valuable plant and animal species that are only found there. Habitat destruction occurs when land inhabited by an organism is destroyed or altered so far that the organism can't live the way it did before. If the habitat that an organism depends on is destroyed, then the organism is at risk of disappearing. An estimated 15 million native peoples live in tropical rainforests. And these people are also threatened by habitat destruction. Because they obtain nearly everything they need from the forest, the loss of their habitat could force them to leave their homes and move into cities. This drastic change of lifestyle would cause the native people to possibly lose their culture and their traditions. So now we're going to switch gears. We just talked about the tropical rainforest. Now we're going to talk about the temperate forests. First, let's talk about temperate forests that get a lot of rain. Okay, so there are two types of temperate forests we're going to talk about. The first one, temperate rainforest. These are forest communities that are characterized by cool, humid weather, abundant rainfall, where tree branches are draped with mosses and tree trunks are covered with lichens, and the forest floor is covered with ferns. A great example of this is forests right outside of Seattle in Washington in the United States, or just north in Vancouver, Canada. So these occur in North America, like I just described, but they can also be found in Australia and in New Zealand, and they are dominated by evergreen trees, such as the Douglas fir or the Sitka spruce. Although they're located north of most other rainforests, the temperate rainforest of the Pacific Northwest still maintains a moderate temperature year-round. The Pacific Northwest, they're talking about Washington State, so Seattle, Washington. It rarely freezes there because the nearby Pacific Ocean waters keep the temperatures mild by blowing cool ocean water over the forest. Not cold, mind you, but only cool. As the ocean winds meet the coastal Olympic Mountains, a large amount of rainfall is there produced, which keeps the temperature cool and moist. So now let's talk about temperate deciduous forests. Temperate deciduous forests are forests characterized by trees that shed their leaves in the fall That's deciduous means. Shedding their leaves in the fall, that's a deciduous tree. These are located between 30 degrees north and 50 degrees north latitude. We live in the Scranton Valley. We live in a temperate deciduous forest area. The range of temperatures can be extreme. The summers can get as hot as 35 degrees Celsius. That's really hot. That's like 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And the winter temperatures are often below freezing. So there's a lot of temperature fluctuation here. They receive between 75 to 125 centimeters of precipitation annually, and this helps them to decompose dead organic matter. This contributes to rich soils of the forest. So in temperate deciduous forests, you find some of the most rich soils. Now, why are the soils so rich? In the other forest, the tropical rainforest, the soils were not very rich. And that was because the plants and animals, or the plants, were trying to get all of the nutrients, and they were growing so fast. But in a temperate deciduous forest, there's a winter. And in the winter, things go dormant. And while they're going dormant, they decompose and become soil, but they don't use that decomposed matter until the spring. So there's a chance for all of those leaves to kind of build up into a dead organic matter pile. So you're always making better and better soil. So here is an example. We're looking at the area of Stuttgart, Germany. And let's look at the rainfall. The rainfall is much less than in a tropical rainforest, but it's still relatively high. The temperature fluctuates wildly between, and it dips below freezing. In the Northeast United States, these temperatures would be even more dramatic. Let's talk about the plants of the deciduous forest. They grow in layers, just like before, with tall trees dominating the canopy, while shrubs would cover the understory. Also, more light reaches the deciduous forest floors than in the rainforest floors. And this only allows more more plants to grow on the forest floor. Ferns and bushes. Temperate forest plants are adapted to survive the seasonal changes. Okay, it gets really hot in the summer and really cold in the winter. In fall and winter, trees will shed their leaves and seeds and go dormant under the insulation of the soil. So in the soil, it doesn't actually get below freezing. So all of the sap from the tree, okay, will go, and all of the water from the tree will get stored down in the roots below the ground where it won't freeze. Because when the water freezes, it expands and would rupture the cell walls of the various plants. So they put their water away down at the base of the tree where it doesn't freeze, and that way they can protect their water and protect their bodies from being destroyed by freezing water. With the returning warmth in spring, the trees then grow new leaves and the seeds germinate. And this is where we get the vision of spring as being just a season of new life. Let's talk about the animals of the deciduous forests. The animals of temperate deciduous forests are adapted to use the forest plants for both food and for shelter. Birds cannot survive the harsh winters of the deciduous forests, so they fly south in the winter for warmer weather and better availability of food. Other animals, such as mammals and insects, will just reduce their activity so that they don't need as much food in the winter. This helps them to survive the winter. That's called hibernation within mammals. Frogs will dig burrows under the ground, and so will insects, or they'll hide inside of plants or inside of your house. Let's move on. Taiga, that's how you pronounce this word. The taiga, there's another word for it. The word for it is boreal forest. The boreal forest is a region of evergreen coniferous forest, that means pine trees, below the Arctic and subarctic tundra regions. The taiga has long winters and little vegetation. The growing season can be as short as 50 days, with most plant growth occurring during the summer months because of nearly constant daylight and larger amounts of precipitation. Way up near the North Pole, the days are very long in the summer. You can have almost 24 hours of light during the summer, and in the winter, almost 24 hours of darkness. So here are the regions where you find taigas in this dark green highlighted region: Canada, Alaska, and northern Russia. The rainfall is less. It's a lot of rainfall in the summer months, but almost no rainfall in the winter months. That's because it's snow, and snow doesn't count for as much precipitation as rain does. So like an inch of rain, you might have an inch of snow, but an inch of snow only counts as a tiny fraction of an inch of rain. So like you could have a foot of snow, but a foot of snow equates to only about half an inch of rain. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but that's why those numbers are so low in the winter months for precipitation, because it's all snow, and snow is very light compared to rain. You can also see the temperatures fluctuate amazingly, like just crazy. In the summer, it gets warm-ish, but not very warm. It only might get up to like 50 degrees or even 60 degrees on the hottest days. But in the winter, it gets really, really cold, well below freezing. It's almost below freezing as much as it is above freezing. The conifer is a tree that has seeds that develop in cones, hence the word conifer, cones. Their leaves, arrow-shaped and waxy coating, helps them to hold water during the harsh winter. The conifer's shape also helps the tree to shed snow to the ground so that it doesn't get weighed down. So the cone shape of a pine tree, it has that shape so that it can let the snow get off of it when it not get too weighed down. Conifer needles contain substances that make the soil acidic. So when the needles fall to the ground, they can prevent other plants from growing near them. That's a really clever, well, not clever, I mean, it's a really cool adaptation. They actually poison the ground around them so nothing else will grow. Also, soil forms very slowly in a taiga because the climate and acidity will slow down decomposition. The taiga has many lakes and swamps that in the summer will attract birds that feed on insects. So the birds will fly north for the winter. I'm sorry, north in the summer. To avoid the harsh winters, though, the birds will migrate. So some of them will spend their winters here, like the chickadee, for example, while some year-round residents, like shrews, will burrow underground and hibernate to get better insulation. Other animals, such as the snowshoe hare, have adaptations to avoid predation by shedding their brown summer fur and growing white fur that camouflages them in the winter snow so that the predators can't see them. But the foxes also do this. They get white fur in the winter. And that is it. Thank you guys very much.